Welcome to FutureSec. We've run these events in New York City, Washington, D.C., London and Dublin over the last couple of years. So for me and my team, it's a tremendous privilege to finally be doing one here in our home city of Cork. And today we have a very strong lineup of speakers and panelists who are going to share with you their perspectives on the future of technology and its convergence with cybersecurity and with data regulation. The few minutes I get to kick this off, I like to touch on some of the key themes as I see them shaping our industry. And the fourth industrial revolution is defined by digital transformation. And every company now, to a degree, is becoming a tech company. And over the next 20 years, cybersecurity, big data, and artificial intelligence are going to present some profound challenges to humanity. And no person, no company, or indeed no country is going to be immune from their effects. Ireland occupies a really interesting place in this conversation. We are home to the world's leading tech companies. And these tech companies house their data centers here. And now we regularly refer to these as the cloud, or else the world's filing cabinet. And I've recently just finished reading a book written by the president of Microsoft, Brad Smith, where he said, Ireland is to data what Switzerland is to money. Now, if you've ever been to Switzerland or you've ever spent time in the company of a Swiss banker, there's a lot of connotations you can draw from that. Some really positive and possibly some not so positive. But what it certainly does mean is that our little island is now a major cog in the global data storage, data collection, and data processing market. And as we well know, over the last 18 months, regulation has changed significantly. We had the introduction of GDPR in May of last year, the General Data Protection Regulation. That was followed by the NIST directive for protection of critical infrastructure. And then we saw the US following suit. A little bit slowly, did it in specific states such as California and Massachusetts. A little bit of a patchwork quilt, but nonetheless it was progress. We've also seen the introduction of the bipartisan US Cybersecurity Non-Disclosure Act, which means that publicly traded companies now need to have a cybersecurity executive on their board. In the UK, we've seen the ICO issue eye-watering fines against British Airways, which was, I think, a £230 million fine, and Marriott, a £100 million fine. And what this demonstrates is that the expanded enforcement capacity provided to regulators under GDPR is really significant. And if we look at our own regulatory environment in Ireland, the first 12 months of GDPR saw over 6,500 complaints to our regulator. Of that, there was 50 investigations initiated. And in those investigations, they included some of these tech giants, Facebook, WhatsApp, and Google. And as we all know, that the ethics that these large tech companies apply to the collection and processing of data is questionable at best. And we know that our regulator, or Helen Dixon, is not afraid to pick a fight, as has been witnessed with the current standoff on the public services card and our own government. So this is going to be a really interesting area over the next 12 to 18 months. But how did we get to where we are today from a cybersecurity perspective? And I think the origins of today's cybercrime can be traced back to a type of virus that acted like a worm. In 1971, users of ARPANET, which was the earliest form of internet, were caught off guard when their computer screens displayed a message, I am the creeper, catch me if you can. Creeper was a type of virus that duplicated itself across systems. But unlike today's malicious viruses, it could only display a message. The first malicious viruses were seen in 1974. They were documented. There was one called Rabbit. And what Rabbit did is duplicate itself across systems and invade them until it caused them to crash. And since then, we've seen a massive proliferation of different types of malware over the years. And I mean, the first global breakout I remember was in 2000. It was called the I Love You virus. And that propagated via email. I remember seeing it on the news where as the sun rose in different countries and people opened their email, they all wanted to know who loved them. They clicked on it and they got infected. In 2009, 2010, 2011, we saw the emergence of banking malware, Trojans and keyloggers and backdoors trying to steal your financial information. And then in 2014, 2015, we saw the real strong emergence of ransomware, a really blunt instrument, and that went in line with cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin. It made it really easy and anonymous for the bad guys to get paid and to monetize their endeavors. But in 2017, the world got a really rude awakening, and it was the first time that we had seen nation-state attacks take place with Pecha and WannaCry. And this was a watershed moment. The backstory is well documented. I mean, everybody knows it was an exploit built by the NSA for Windows, which they were using against their own adversaries. They subsequently got hacked by a group called Shadow Brokers. They dumped this exploit on the dark web for whoever could find it to use it. An organized a state-organized group called Zinc got their hands on this, and they weaponized the exploit. And it created a virulent cyber weapon that was sent ripping through the internet. It hit the UK first, and we all remember the NHS was knocked offline. And then, due to the wormable nature of the malware, quickly propagated to Spain and other countries around the world. It ended up infecting over 350,000 computers in 150 different locations across the world. And if this wasn't enough of a wake-up call, just 6 weeks later, the Ukraine got absolutely pummeled by Pecha. And Pecha used the same payload that had been stolen from the NSA. 10% of all of the computers in Ukraine were knocked offline. Hospitals, electricity grids, schools. And it also spread from the Ukraine and hit some major corporations globally, FedEx, and it completely wiped out the Danish shipping giant, Maersk. So we've learned 3 things from this. Number 1, the offensive capabilities of countries in digital warfare has significantly increased. Number 2, we know that they are discovering and building exploits for software that we all use. And instead of going to the manufacturers and disclosing these vulnerabilities, they're stockpiling them for their own use against their own adversaries. And 3, while they're pretty good at protecting weapons of mass destruction, such as bombs, they're not very good at protecting digital weapons of mass destruction, which can be stolen on a thumb drive. Another major area when we talk about digital transformation and the 4th industrial revolution is big data. Now, big data touches absolutely everything. And we have created more data in the last 2 years than we have from the dawn of humanity until sometime in 2016. And in the near future, almost every object on Earth will be creating data. And everything we do leaves a trail of digital exhaust, location data, and other information which will live long on after we are all gone. In fact, we now consume more data in a single day than our 15th century ancestors consumed in their entire lives. And by 2021, we will have 50 zettabytes of data stored. Now, for those of you who don't know the difference between your exabytes and petabytes and zettabytes, this table helps. But 50 zettabytes is 50 Pacific Oceans. Or another interesting analogy I heard is that if you took every grain of sand on this planet and multiplied it by 85, you get 50 zettabytes of data. But we need to be careful, because in this vast sea of data, there's a frighteningly accurate picture of every single one of us being built. Who we are, where we live, where we go, what we do, what we buy, and what we say. It's all being stored and recorded forever. And see, the thing about big data is that it's tremendously powerful. Humanity can fix problems that we never thought could be fixed. It's incredibly progressive. But anything that can change the world, by definition, it can change it for the worse as it can change it for the better. And we're living in an extraordinary time. We're experiencing a revolution which is almost silently sweeping through our lives. And our planet is developing a central nervous system. And we are the human sensors on the backbone feeding it. We are the faces of big data. And big data is changing everything. Going hand in glove with big data, we've got artificial intelligence. And while big data is great, if you can't process the data and get actionable insights from that data, it's difficult to make sense of it. So with artificial intelligence, I mean, we've seen tremendous advancements over the last 3 years in this specific field. Just recently, the chief executive of Google made a statement, and he said that artificial intelligence will be more transformative for the human race than electricity. And last week, we possibly took a step closer to that actually becoming a reality. Google do a lot of collaboration with NASA. You may have seen this in the news. And on Friday, a NASA website released a paper alleging that Google had reached quantum supremacy. Now, quantum supremacy is a milestone in quantum computing. And essentially what it is alleging is that the Google quantum computer completed a calculation in 3 minutes and 20 seconds that would take the world's current most powerful computer, called Summit, 10,000 years to complete. See, classical computers, they process data in a binary fashion, which is ones and zeros. Quantum computing, they process data in electrons and photons. And this has the ability to change everything as we know it and put AI and ML and deep learning on turbocharge. Conversely, you can imagine if this technology got in the wrong hands, it destroys everything we currently know about cybersecurity, including cryptography. But that's probably a discussion for another day. But as we stand right now, AI is having a big impact in terms of the InfoSec community. The InfoSec community has a lot of challenges. We have an incredible amount of escalating attacks. We have increasing complexity in the networks. Businesses are trying to drive operational efficiency with more software, more cloud, more servers, more mobility. And there's a huge lack of resource in the market. It's almost like the perfect storm. And AI helps across all of these areas. It helps to understand an awful lot of the noise that's out there in terms of threat intelligence and the type of challenges we're wrestling with. It helps to make sense of the complexity and how all of your different systems are talking to you. And it helps to supplement the workforce who are really struggling in a difficult environment. AI will never replace humans when it comes to cybersecurity, because cybersecurity is not black or white, it's very much gray. But again, the bad guys are using AI effectively, and we're starting to see a lot of the attacks that happen globally, whether they're phishing attacks or spear phishing attacks. They're getting these large data sets which are leaked onto the internet, and they're applying their own algorithms to them to try and get insights to build their attacks. One of the good examples we saw was on the video that started, where Bill Hardner seamlessly morphed into Tom Cruise and then into Seth Rogen. Deepfakes it's a really interesting area, and you can imagine if you're a finance person working in a large company and suddenly you get a video call or a phone call the old-fashioned way from a chief executive asking you to make a large transfer of cash. It's against company protocols, but it's the boss after all, right? So you make the transfer. But was it really him? Symantec have issued a paper saying that they've seen it happen successfully 3 times already this year. And in one instance, the company transferred $10 million to the fraudsters. To make this worse, we're seeing that everyone, is feeding the information to these guys. Earlier this year, we saw FaceApp, built by a Russian company, where people take a selfie and it shows how they're going to age. A novel idea. But where that actual data is going and how it's being stored is an interesting conundrum. And we've also seen Zhao, the Chinese company, go mainstream with their deepfake app, where you can overlay your own face on famous actors. You see an example of it here. And this is quite ominous when you look at how quickly technology is progressing and some of the significant challenges that this is going to present. I'm out of time, so in wrapping up, I was having a coffee this morning and I was watching CBS, and one of the lead stories said that Facebook are about to pay $1 billion to acquire a brain computing company called Control App. And this company allows people to, with the electrodes coming from their brain, to control avatars and control apps and so forth. So without ever doing anything, they only have to think about what it is they want to achieve. And what this illustrates is that sweeping digital transformation has incredible promise for the world. But we have most definitely reached an inflection point. The world has turned information technology into an incredibly powerful weapon. And the people that are building this technology have to accept more responsibility for it as we look into the future. Governments need to regulate more technology, and they need to move faster with the pace of innovation. And we collectively need to confront challenges that have no pre-existing playbooks, including cybercrime, cyber war, social media, data privacy, and the moral, ethical conundrums that come with artificial intelligence. I'm out of time. I'm going to thank you for listening. I'm going to hand you over to your moderator, Jonathan Healy, and I hope you have a great day.